Hello there and good morning. Welcome to today's Coffee Talk. My name is Madison Miller and I am the marketing coordinator here at the Business Software Center. Today's topic we will cover is achieving usage goals for Microsoft 365. Use what you pay for. Now, in our autumn series, this is our second to last session, and we will be upgrading our Coffee Talk series to a more weekly basis. So if you're interested in continuing on with our Coffee Talk series, please email me at info@businesssoftwarecenter.com, or you can sign up on our Coffee Talks with our website via our events page. Now for today, the Achieving Usage Goals for Microsoft is going to focus specifically on our smarter software management. And we will discuss how to increase your Microsoft usage through automatic tracking and monitoring tools such as our Smarter SaaS product. Our Smarter SaaS product is a very useful tool, and I will go over a demo on how to use that later on. And excitingly, we do have the 14-day free trial to test out as well. But we're going to go over different ways of how you can track your Microsoft 365 usage, and then we can dive into our Smarter SaaS. So this is just a reminder, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A box on the right-hand side, and I can be sure to get to them as fast as possible. Likewise, if you want to give us any feedback or have any questions, you can always use the hashtag CoffeeTalkTBSC. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, so we can certainly see this hashtag on social media and respond to you shortly. Now, in order to track and monitor your usage for your Microsoft 365, I think it's important to know what is SAM. So SAM stands for Software Asset Management. And as you can see here in this diagram, SAM falls into IT asset management. So IT asset management embodies software asset management. But then software asset management embodies software licensing management and software licensing compliance. And so what I like to think of software licensing management is a form of optimization. So I would say your two big sections here under SAM are optimization and compliance. So moving forward, I think the best direction to take with your Microsoft 365 usage is certainly look into the compliance and the optimization opportunities that you have with your licensing. Now, to understand software asset management, it's important to know the goals. So the goals of SAM are to keep track of your assets. So that definitely applies to anything compliance related or even optimization related. Now, another goal of SAM is to simplify the process and make the process automatic. I'm sure if you would interview anybody in your IT department that has the responsibility of software asset management, they certainly would tell you it's a lot easier automating everything than keeping in a manual process. And so an example of this would be certainly with compliance. Oftentimes we see companies doing manual service provider licensing agreements or SPLAs. And the issue with doing this manually is that oftentimes you get the incorrect data. And unfortunately, whenever you submit the incorrect data, it leaves you prone to auditing disasters. And that's something you certainly want to avoid. So by automating the process, it pulls all the correct data. And we have run tests on our Smarter SPLA and our Smarter SaaS that do validate that we can get the correct data and information for you to ensure that you have the most up-to-date information for your service provider licensing agreements. Now, another goal of SAM is to, of course, reduce the cost, and that is reducing the cost either directly or indirectly. So another example would be through automation as well. So perhaps your employees are staying later doing these manual processes. A way to reduce the cost of paying overtime, what you can do is automate the software asset management process so that way it can reduce your company spend. But indirectly, it helps perhaps increase your return on investment, or it could even increase your sales. For instance, if everything is automated, say you run an online business, if everything is automated and the sales is processed automatically, then you're more likely to see an increase of sales because your website speed is fast and you're getting everything to go for your customers, and customers don't feel like they're waiting a whole lot of the time. So another goal of software asset management is to plan strategically, and that specifically means supporting IT and other departments. So as I had mentioned before about automating the process of software asset management, this would certainly apply as well. You need to plan strategically in order to remain compliant and to optimize your usage. And so I would say our smarter SaaS solution certainly helps with planning strategically, but partnering with TBSC, we also give our advice on how to plan for a better SAM strategy. But most importantly, SAM can help pay for the software you use and use the software you are paying for. I really like this quote, and this is actually one of our company phrases. We really think that you should be using what you're paying for. And that means knowing exactly what you're paying for. So taking an inventory of the software you currently have, comparing it to what you're using, and figure out, okay, why is it this software hasn't been deployed yet? Why isn't we fully utilizing this? A really good example is with Microsoft Office 365. Now, Office 365 comes with a large variety of applications, depending, of course, on what licensing you're on. So say, for instance, you have these licenses deployed, and a good example of this is the Teams usage. So you have this deployed, and you're noticing that maybe only 70% of your staff are using Microsoft Teams. Well, that is a problem because, one, that creates communication issues if your team is not all using the same platform to communicate, share ideas, join meetings, etc. But at the same time, Microsoft encourages at least 95% usage, and you're certainly not getting what you're paying for if only 70% of your employees are using these items. So with Smarter 365, we can, of course, go over this information with you, review it, and let you know exactly what's used, what's not being used, and we'll ask the important questions. Okay, well, why? Sometimes we find that there is a surplus of licenses and businesses don't remember even purchasing these licenses. And hopefully, if you're on the cloud, you're only paying that month-to-month subscription. So you can cancel that. That way, you can flex your subscribers down for that month and not have to pay. But of course, if you get anybody new on your team, then if you're on the cloud, you can flex your subscribers up, and it's on a rolling basis, so you can always move it up or down month per month. So the question is, how to track your software usage? Well, as I mentioned before, adopting the best compliance and optimization strategies is certainly my advice. After all, those are the two big components of software asset management and, in turn, IT asset management. So I would like to review exactly what is software compliance. So software compliance goes over what you're legally entitled to use. So whenever you sign up for Microsoft 365, oftentimes you will get a software licensing agreement. And so in that agreement, that contract that you sign, you will get a notification of what you're legally entitled to use. I would say that this is primarily useful information for anybody on an EA licensing model, especially because EA licensing models often come in 3-year contracts, or I believe 5-year contracts. So if you're stuck in a contract for a lengthy amount of time, I would say that you should definitely follow up with what you're legally entitled to use, because two things could happen. You could either be under licensing your team, which would obviously fall into auditing disaster for you, or you can be under licensing your team, which means you're not using all the licensing that you're currently paying for. So with software compliance, that often involves taking inventory of your software. Now, I'm not sure exactly what your business strategies are, But this is a huge task that falls onto the IT department that oftentimes gets overlooked. Sometimes it even gets swept under the rug because the IT department is so busy with other things. If this is a manual process, it will oftentimes get forgotten about. But it's important to at least check your inventory on a regular basis. And I would say if you're not doing that, you should start implementing that strategy. And of course, my recommendation is to automate this, and I can teach you how to do that. Now, with software compliance, there often is audits, and this is an effort to reduce piracy and abuse. So that would fall into the overusage of those licenses. So if you're using more than what you're paying for, that essentially means you're not in compliance and you're not paying for those used licenses, which means you'd have to pay back fees on that. But then you might have to pay legal fees as well, just to make sure you get back into compliance. So not to scare anybody, it's not really scary if you have the right tools in place, but these audits are really awful when it comes to fixing the problem. It's a lot easier to track and monitor and ensure these audits never happen, or end badly. I should say audits might happen, but I'm saying end badly. So you are required to have the correct licenses for each device. So with Microsoft 365, oftentimes with their applications, they allow up to 5 different devices. And so if you have one license that is installed on 7 devices, you are no longer in compliance with your license, and so that could cause issues whenever audits are taking place. So it's important to also check and see the installs on your devices, and I can teach you how to do that as well. Now with software compliance, whenever you are software compliant, and this is really good, especially if you're on the cloud, it indicates you must run on the correct version. So the benefits of that are obviously it enhances the security and reduces the amount of bugs. There are a whole bunch of updates that go on. So if you're on the cloud, these automatically get updated for you. And of course, there is a faster performance. However, if you are still on downloaded desktop applications, you might have to do regular updates to your computer to ensure that these security and bugs are taken care of. But yes, software compliance also includes running on the correct versions of your applications. Now, since this talk is focusing on Microsoft 365, I would like to focus on the compliance examples of that. So Microsoft has the ability to perform audits every year. And I'm not saying that they will do this every year, I'm just saying they have the ability. It's written in many of the contracts that if they can, they will, and especially if something triggers an audit. So an example of an audit trigger would be if you're a small business moving really fast and growing really fast and accumulating a lot of new employees and buying a whole lot of new licenses. What will happen is this will trigger a Microsoft audit, and then you'll receive a formal letter in the mail. And you'll get about 30 days notice for this audit to take place. And oftentimes these audits are done by a third party, so you'll probably get contacted by the third party that was allocated by Microsoft to you. And what happens is it will take, either a day to several days, depending on the size of your business, for them to perform this audit and see if you're in compliance or not. And if you're not in compliance, then you have the ability to get in compliance. They give you time and they give you the resources, and you can find this on the Microsoft website, different resources that you can do in order to rectify any auditing mistakes that you might have had. And so if you end up not fixing or rectifying, of course, the worst case scenario is legal action. But this is a really long process and it's nothing to be scared of. You can certainly remain compliant and in control of any of these auditing disasters if you have the correct systems put in place to ensure your usage and purchasing of Microsoft licenses. So moving forward, it's important to also know what is licensing optimization. So this is the second aspect of software asset management. So we first covered the compliance. Now we're going to look at the management or the optimization of licensing. So, of course, licensing optimization ensures the correct licenses. So what I mean by that is you have the ability to look at the current usage of each of your employees or staff. And if you see you're purchasing an E3 license, but your staff is not using all the applications included with that, perhaps you can reduce down to an E1 license, which would take some applications away, make the cost cheaper for you, and increase the usage because your employees will actually be using the applications that they commonly use. On the other hand, if you look at the same situation, you can kind of twist it in a different way. Perhaps you're on an E3 license and you notice, okay, my staff is not using all these applications. Well, you can ask yourself the question, why aren't they? I'm supplying them the tools that they need. Why is it they're not using them? Is it because they need training? Oftentimes we find it is because they need training on these applications, or they're not even aware that they have these applications available to them for use. So what you can do is provide training. And what's really nice is Microsoft provides free training through their website on many of their applications. Likewise, you can find training on YouTube videos as well. So this is a way you can certainly increase your license usage and in turn optimize your licensing if your employees aren't using all the applications that you're paying for. Now, two other ways of license optimization, which I've covered previously, are obviously knowing your application usage and your application installs. And these do fuse together with the compliance features, but as far as optimizing, it's slightly different because we're not focusing on the audit aspect or the compliance aspect. Instead, we're focusing on the return on investment. We're focusing on the money we're spending and if we're actually using these and where exactly are these installed. And we want to increase this usage to at least 95%. So if you are having a hard time optimizing your licenses or you're new to software asset management, I compiled a list here of different questions you can consider for optimization. So the first question to consider is, are we using the correct licenses? You know, we can go back to that example of the E3 to the E1. You can always reduce your licenses. It's super easy, especially if you're on the cloud. Then again, if you don't want to reduce your licenses, but instead have your employees use what you're actually paying for, you need to ask those tough questions. Okay, well, exactly why aren't they using them? And then, of course, you can offer them the Microsoft training. Another question to consider is the effort of optimizing these licenses reasonable? I would say that if you're looking to optimize these licenses, certainly make it an automatic process, just like the compliance. Software asset management is something that can certainly be fully automatic. Here at TBSC, we've found a way to make this fully automatic for you, especially with any Microsoft licensing. We can help you with our Smarter SaaS. Just stick to the end and I can show you exactly our product and what we can do to help you. Another question to consider for optimization is what licenses are deployed versus what are used. So an example of that is surplus, as I mentioned earlier. Perhaps you have many licenses that are deployed and being used, but then you notice that there are one or two that you purchased and they're not allocated to anybody. Ask yourself these questions. Why exactly aren't these deployed yet? Who were these allocated to? Why do we have these? Perhaps you had a freelance staff and you needed this Microsoft license for a couple of months and the freelancer has since moved on. Maybe you're paying for a license that you're not using. So in this case, you can reharvest that license and allocate it to perhaps a new freelancer. Another question to consider for optimization is, are we overspending on licenses? I would say that this is heavily important, especially if you're looking at ways to cutting costs or reducing costs, a quick and easy way to do that is to see if you're overspending on your software licenses. You'd be really surprised to know how many businesses completely forget about their software. You know, when somebody is running a clothing store, they run inventory on the clothing that they have, or if somebody's working in a restaurant, they run inventory on the food that they might have. But how often do we really take inventory on the current licenses that we have? Not very often. So my advice, once again, is obviously to automate this process so you never have to worry about it or even forget about it. So how TBSC can help? We can help by tracking your licenses through our Smarter SaaS. And of course, we can get you to the goal of 95% or better usage. So our Smarter SaaS offers preventative maintenance, so it helps ensure no auditing craziness. We monitor your installs for you, we monitor your usage, and we can even suggest training needs for your company. We can help you virtually. We don't have to come into your office and do any of these installs. This is all done through web URL in the cloud. And of course, we offer quick, efficient, and cost-effective SaaS management. So before I begin I'm going to show you a demo today, but before I begin, I'm just going to check and see if we have any questions coming in. So let me check and see here. Yes, I do have a question. It says, on our EA renewable, our EA renewable is coming up. What do you recommend we do to stay optimized? Well, I would say that you certainly don't need to renew your EA contract if it is coming to an end. I would say it's really important to consider moving to the cloud. You know, the cloud is here to stay. Remote working is on the rise. I think getting your business on the cloud is your best course of action, especially in the licensing world, because as I mentioned earlier, there is the ability to flex your subscribers up and down month to month. So you can always adjust the amount of licenses without being tied to a contract. I do have another question here. It says, if I would be audited by Microsoft, how would I know I'm in compliance? I believe I covered that slightly, but I can show you using our Smarter SaaS tool how you can be in compliance. So let me just go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I will go over our Smarter SaaS solution for you. So up on the screen, you should be able to see our Smarter SaaS. Now, of course, here is our dashboard. And this is demo data, of course, but we can give you advice on reharvesting, show you different optimization areas, and of course, show you different licenses you're in surplus with. But to answer that question we currently have on the screen, our Smarter SaaS does have a compliance feature, which you can see on this left-hand side. Simply click on that, and you'll be redirected to a different page, and we can show you each user and what devices that they are installed on, and whether or not they are in compliance or not. And what's really nice is everything is color-coded here, so you can see firsthand in an easy to use way whether or not you're in compliance. So for instance, this company with this example data has one user that isn't in compliance. And this is certainly not good. 11 installs is not good, especially for Microsoft 365, where they only give you 5 installs. So there's several different ways you can tackle this. Of course, you can email your staff and say, hey, do you realize you're over-installed? What devices are you using? What aren't you using? Sometimes we forget we installed them on a device and we just, upgrade to a new laptop or we upgrade to a new phone. So that might be the case in this situation. Now with the yellow here, it's symbolizing that you need to slow down. You're at the 5 limit already. So for instance, ways to tackle this are just emailing those employees and letting them know, hey, you're at your 5 device limit. Please don't download anymore. Or if you decide to switch your laptop or computer, be sure to uninstall before reinstalling. Then of course, the green means you're good to go, you're safe. But it never hurts to, send reminder emails to your employees, letting them know exactly where they are. But this is how you can know whether or not you're in compliance. I mean, look at that. Look how easy it was. There was no effort on your part. You just clicked a button and here you go. You can see all the data for your business. Now, you know how I was saying earlier about how important usage is. Just want to go over that with our Microsoft Teams information. So we can see here the overall user activity count. You can see here there's so many users using in this business who are using private chat messaging, but not many are using the meeting count, and that's really weird. So with information like this, we would ask important questions like, okay, well, why exactly is messaging being used more so than meetings? Oftentimes we come to find that businesses are switching back and forth between Zoom, Google, Skype, and this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, especially because Microsoft Teams is kind of like the hub for communication, provides everything that you really need for your company, the meetings, the scheduling, all that. So you don't really need to use video tools outside of that to have these calls or meetings. So we would encourage you to put your employees on maybe like a Microsoft training course in this case to teach them how to use Teams and get more comfortable with it. But then also let them know, we'll teach them and let them know all the benefits of using Microsoft Teams over, say, constantly switching back and forth. You can have everything in one place. So I'm just going to go back to the dashboard just because I went over it really quickly, but we do have this reharvesting feature I wanted to bring up. What I really like about this reharvesting feature is, you know, it does take a license that isn't being used and reallocates it somewhere else where it can be used. And so what we have is this automated email system here. So you can send an email to your users, say you program in Smarter SaaS reviewing the last 60 days. Find a couple of employees that haven't used any of these applications in the last 60 days. You can send an email to them automatically using this button here, asking, hey, we see you haven't used this application in 60 days. Can you confirm whether or not you're still using these applications? And of course, if you don't get a response, or if they say no, not using these anymore, then you can certainly reharvest your licenses. And like I mentioned, getting on the cloud. So like the person who asked me earlier about the EA, if you're on the cloud, this would be really beneficial to you. Certainly consider not renewing your EA contract. Okay, so let me just go ahead and go back to my presentation. Before I go back to my presentation, I actually see another question popping up, so let me go ahead and see that real quick. Do you advise your customers to use a hybrid model, secondhand licenses and E1 plans, for example? Secondhand licenses and E1 plans, for example. That's really interesting. I actually don't know too much about secondhand licenses. So what I can do is ask my team, and then I can certainly send you an email back. So I don't need to publish this. So if you need an email, please drop it in the comments, and I won't publish it, and I can certainly answer that for you. But from what I understand, maybe a hybrid might be a little bit more confusing. But then again, at the same time, with our SaaS product, we track and monitor over 40 different licenses. So if you are using something from Adobe, something from Microsoft, etc., I don't think it's an issue with tracking and monitoring at all when it comes to using our software. So I would say, I hope that answered your question, but if not, certainly just leave me your email and I can get back to you after talking to my team. Okay, let's see here. Yes, so our Smarter SaaS is a free 14-day trial. So you get all the perks that I showed you in our demonstration. You know, it finds your usage levels, it automates your data, and improves your software usage. So if you're interested, please contact us using the info@businesssoftwarecenter.com, and we can sign you up for our 14-day free trial. And I just wanted to thank you so much for joining. You know, this is our second to last coffee talk for our autumn series. Our final coffee talk is on November 26th at 10:30 a.m. And that is about software compliance, avoiding Microsoft audits, and knowing your license usage. So it's going to be reviewing a lot of what I talked about today, but going also in a bit more detail about avoiding audits, I think it would be worthwhile joining, especially if you're unfamiliar with this. Now, of course, this talk and our future talks will always be uploaded to our YouTube channel, so feel free to follow us on YouTube and use the hashtag CoffeeTalkTBSC to get in contact with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. And if I was unable to answer any of your questions, or if you have any other questions for me, please feel free to email me at businesssoftwarecenter.com. I'll put info@businesssoftwarecenter.com, and I'll certainly get back to you. Thank you so much for joining, and I did get the anonymous email, so I will certainly be able to email you. Thank you so much for joining, and take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.